Hi, I'm Paul Marobella. Welcome to State of the Biz. Today's topic is, what does modern marketing mean in 2023? And I have to tell you, this panel today had me awake at 3 a.m. this morning. I think it was because of this panel today that we assembled, but I'm sure it is actually because there's so many amazing minds and amazing people sitting on this couch with me. I can't wait to share all the insights that they have for you. And I can't do them justice in introducing them, so I'm gonna have them do it themselves. I'm gonna start with my very good friend, Laura here.
Hi, I'm Laura Maness, and I am the global CEO of Gray. I joined in September on the 105th anniversary of Gray. And I also sit on the board of B Lab in the US and Canada, and also sit on the board of SOS Children's Villages, which is the world's largest NGO for orphaned and abandoned children.
Cool. And I must admit, we've worked together for a long time, so you guys might hear some stories that Laura and I will bring you from the advertising and marketing trenches when we were at Havas together. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Pillet. I am the Global Chief Marketing Officer of the Fossil Group, based in Dallas. We're a holding company for multiple different brands in watches and jewelry and accessories. And I also started in September. I also work on a lot of Web3 initiatives. Jane Dow, We3, promoting women and non-binary individuals to get ahead more in the Web3 space. So I toggle both the Web2 world and the Web3 world.
I look forward to getting into Web3 with you.
Okay, excellent.
We're gonna double click on that for sure. And my friend Jason.
Hi, I'm Jason Harris, the co-founder and CEO of Mekanism. We're an advertising agency. We've been around since 2006, so a while now. And then I also co-founded an organization called the Creative Alliance, which is a sort of collective of agencies that do social good work. So those are kind of two things I work on.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Brenda.
I'm Brenda Tsai. It's great to be here. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for State Street, which is a leading financial institution, fourth largest asset manager in the world, and also one of the top 3 investment servicing firms in the world. I sit on the board of Kantar, which is a branding and research agency. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you all. Like I said, unbelievable group. So I think we'll start off with the title question. Right? What does modern marketing mean in 2023? And I think we've all talked about modern marketing at some point. Every year it feels like what's a part of modern marketing changes. Let's start there. Laura, what does modern marketing mean to you in 2023? How would you describe it? How do you think about it?
I think of it as an invitation. I think of it as an opportunity to invent the future of how we engage. I think the opportunity for leaning into creativity and ideas, especially when we talk about Web3 and AI, that there's never been a more important time for humanity to kind of come together and do what we do best and unleash our creativity.
We'll talk about creativity and like I said, Web3 and AI here in a minute. It's impossible to have a panel, I think, in 2023 without talking about AI in some form or fashion. But Jason, how about you? How do you think?
Yeah, I think, it's sort of built into our DNA as a company, but I think of modern marketing as creativity and performance. It's, we call it soul and science, but it's really the idea of thinking about marketing as the soul or the core, what makes why a brand exists, what is its reason for being, and then making sure you're balancing that with activities that move the needle and drive shareholder growth and value for the company. So it's putting those two things together, and there's a lot that falls underneath that. But I think, as Laura said, there's never been a more interesting time for marketing and advertising. Yeah. And I think we're kind of getting back to how do you connect, emotional connection with a consumer has never been more important, even as we're going into AI and computer generated assets. I think that becomes even more important is how do you inject humanity into the work you're doing?
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit before Lisa and Brenda, you guys dive in, because you were humble in the setup, right? Best-selling author, right? Soulful Art of Persuasion.
Yes.
And it's after my own heart, writing a book. It's one of my goals. Haven't done it yet, and you did it. It was an amazing book.
Yeah, thanks.
And you have a great podcast, right? soul and science, and I think where you talk about those things, maybe you could just go a little deeper on that as you talk about emotional connection. What are some of the topics that you hear from your guests?
Well, I think it's always a balance of, do you make marketing decisions based on data and insights, or do you make decisions based on gut instinct? Because at some point you have to make decisions for the business, and the CMO's job and the agency's job, therefore, is to drive growth. Like, that's the number one reason for branding and what we do in marketing. And I think there's this struggle and this balance between making decisions with your head or your heart. And is it your instinct, or is it integers that's driving what your behavior is? Are you thinking about the numbers and what everything says, or are you thinking about making the right call for the business and thinking about it in long-term value versus short-term value? So it's obviously both. It's never one or the other, but it's which one is more important for the business.
Yeah, Brenda and I were talking briefly before the panel about CFOs and CMOs, and I have a plan to have 2 CFOs and 2 CMOs on a panel to see how that goes. Talking about Frank will be there.
Actually,
That's called food fight.
That's called exactly. State of the biz, food fight.
That's typically my closest relationship, though.
Yeah, well, I want to hear about that. That's why I brought it up, and Lisa, I want to hear your perspective as well on modern marketing, and we'll probably dive into the finance marketing relationship a little bit.
I mean, I still think we all have a toolbox, and we sometimes overinflate what's the newest and nearest to be representing what modernity is. I think modernity is actually the confluence and the dexterity to use everything that's in it really effectively. So right now everyone assumes because it's AI or assumes because it's Web3, that's modern. What modern is actually realizing the role it plays in the ecosystem of the consumer. I agree. The heart of still connecting is what makes you truly modern. And really, I believe more and more we're going back to leveraging data, but having a strong, why experience matters is having a strong intuitive sense for what's worked and what hasn't. And that comes from doing it and experience it and failing or succeeding and applying that. And so to me, it's more of the application of all those things.
When we met, you were working for a pretty iconic brand, right? Lacoste, but you were very much on CRM and data and analytics, and you were in it for a pretty iconic brand. So you've done
both.
You've done both, right? So you've been in the data piece and driving first-party data and connecting, personalization, but also brand work. I find that interesting, and maybe we'll come back to that in a second.
Right. You still need one to fuel the other, right?
Yeah.
Because to your point, no one's going to, especially today, connect long term if you don't mean something to them. And I don't think that's ever been more important. I agree with that.
There's I interviewed one of the heads of Liquid Death.
Right. Great.
And the idea there was, now it's like it was started in like 2018. It's $700 million in value.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, it's basically packaged water, right? So like nothing differentiated from another water, except for the name and branding. And if they had focus grouped and tested and did data research on the name, it would have failed, right? Because everyone, of course, your instinct is, well, Liquid Death water, I'm never going to buy that.
Best tagline in the industry.
But they went, exactly.
Murder your thirst.
Murder your thirst.
I mean, that is like, that's the tagline.
But it was, started by some creative guys, and they launched it, and it took off because they went all in on what's something that's going to connect, what's going to stand out, how do we disrupt the industry? And research and insights and data wouldn't have shown that.
And it's also interesting that they were agency guys.
Yeah.
Right.
They were
and
agency
they,
guys,
when you know more because you interviewed them, but it's one of my favorite brands, just kind of studying the case study of it and maybe just sort of doing all the things that they couldn't do when they were on the agency side for that reason, right?
Yep, exactly.
We're just going to do it for ourselves and see what works and test and learn and see what doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, great. But I mean, they created a
monster,
$750 million business in only a few years. It shows the power of branding and like attitude and energy. Yeah. For sure.
I'm gonna plug the agency on this one with Greg, because we've had a tagline that's been in existence since 1917, famously effective. And over the last couple of years, we've been really looking to extend and redefine what that means for today. And the definition we've come up with is cultural value. So ideas that create the cultural value that move people, business, and the world forward. And what we found is that cultural value comes not just from meaningfulness and the relevance and salience, but it's actually distinction that drives growth. And so when you think about a commodity like water, when you think about trying to resonate and connect, even in the way that they're delivering their marketing, from a meaningfulness and a relevance standpoint and a salience, but I think where they're winning is on the distinction that they found in their voice and in that brand. And when you can put that formula together, that's really where we're seeing the growth. And you can study that over time and tie it to actual client value. Like famously, effective brands will outperform the stock market. But it has to do with distinction. And what you need for distinction is bravery. So then when you think about, are we really going to say murder your thirst, in these kinds of decisions, and you think about some of the brands, we were just talking about 6 Stripes, so I don't know if you want to go there yet.
No, 6 Stripes are more valuable than 3, really. That's how I would respond to that.
But it's true.
I think a new brand emerging, 6 Stripes.
Yeah, 6 Stripes, yeah.
That's interesting. So you talked about the measurement of culture, and we've worked a lot in culture, having built the annex together at Havas, and we talked about consultants of culture. And is that measurable, and how do you apply that to a brand that maybe isn't tapped into culture, like financial services or other things that it's kind of harder? And we'll talk about that a little bit, but I want to understand that, like when you hear things like that about cultural relevance, does that apply?
Absolutely, 100%. Financial services, so I'm in B2B primarily, and I have found that branding is an incredibly important element and a platform for really articulating what the company is to its employees, to the world, to society, but also to our clients and to our ecosystem, our financial ecosystem. So the role that the company plays in the world is articulated through brand, and it has to pull in cultural truths. In terms of modern marketing and what it means, for me, it's such an interesting question because it's a point in time. And our point in time right now, coming out of 3 years of incredible volatility, whether it be COVID, and then there was geopolitical, and then there's high inflation, and then there's weather disasters, and you think, the world has never been more volatile than it is right now. And in that context, for me, modern marketing is all about bringing together all of the tools, all of the learnings that you have about your audience to really serve that audience better, more, with additional value add, propositions, et cetera. It stitches together everything in a very powerful way. So it's got to be connected. It's got to be really authentic, because I think the tolerance for BS in today's world is very, very low, right? Like people don't want to, there's huge skepticism. And you have to remember in these workplaces, 4 generations that are looking for a common denominator of truth. Like what is that common truth? And that common truth is, from lots of different angles and perspectives and levels. So I use marketing, I use brand for a number of different purposes. And one of those purposes is taking the cultural truth, talking about our company's identity and promoting it further in the world. And
the cultural truths differ by the brand and the category.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. But we all have a role to play.
All have a role to play in it, and sometimes it's getting harder and harder to extract what those cultural truths are. Like I always like to say, those truths live under 5 layers of topsoil and rocks, and like, they're not we're talking to planners and even the creatives, like it's not the first thing that you think of. I'm sure it's not it. Like you need to get dirt under your fingernails and get under there and find it, because it doesn't matter the category. And oftentimes, non-consumer categories are the hardest categories.
It's tricky, and for me, I'm finding that we're really trying to leverage marketing to de-risk the volatility in our business model, meaning reduce the fragmentation, really be prepared for any crisis, anytime, with very unified identity, communications, propositions, also ensuring that we de-risk or make more efficient some of our go-to-market channels with intense targeting, really strong consideration for our value props, because we can't go 5 times, we can only go once,
Right.
to knock on the doors of our clients. So for us, it's integral for the market. The marketing is integral to the business proposition that we're offering in the world.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So we talk about modern marketing. We've and this is for Lisa and Brenda, and then I'll come to Laura and Jason. And then we hear a lot, of the term modern CMO tossed around. In fact, I'm probably guilty of that. I know I am actually. Coming off of modern marketing, and as you think about the role you have today, but also the roles that you've had, what does that mean, right? So for aspiring CMOs, or for folks that are maybe directors or VPs of marketing today that are looking to go to the next level, like, what advice would you give them on what it means to be a modern CMO in 23, 24?
I mean, I think it's very important, when we're talking about culture and cultural relevance, is to be rooted in I would say, the zeitgeist of what's shifting. I mean, what keeps me, I guess, up, or also maybe more alert, isn't so much the specific application of an AI, but it's what the value system that it's bringing forward and how that's going to change, right? Because that's when companies and brands need to shift, right? So if you see something like a Web3 and you realize, wow, we're dealing with the rejection of gated communities, the rejection of lack of transparency, right? All of the things that are actually what's percolating, then that all of a sudden becomes, okay, this is where we're going to be in 5 years. And so I think sometimes my job as a modern marketer is to start to anticipate that shift and be able to prepare the brand and insulate the brand for things that are going to come. The cycle of adoption is so much faster now. So how long, we used to position a brand and it would last for years. Now we have to position in a brand to literally be agile and still be consistent.
Right.
And so
Right.
the modernity comes from that ability, I think, to recognize who you are, your core values, what you mean, but also be able to navigate and shift very quickly, and with a lot of competing, value systems at play.
Let's dive into that just a little bit deeper. So how do you think about organizing your team and resources, and even in finite investment levels and things that that we all deal with? How do you think about that?
I mean, I think we were just talking about this, the having a global business but having local values and local teams, I think, is critical, right? There's no way that I'm going to be as valuable as an arbiter for what resonates to someone who's developing an entire community, in India. So I think it's listening and being very available to the, like what I would call kind of the stereo model, right? What we have to do on top and what we have to listen to coming from the ground up. And so we look at it that way in terms of deploying a stereo system, right? Of teams that are there to reinforce something consistently, and teams that are there and budgets that are there to adapt and connect at a very local level. And I think trying just to, the triangle's done, right? We're really a stereo. We are equal parts, and we are partners, and we are very, we're built to be connected at the middle.
Got it. Thank you. That was great. Brenda, how about, what is a modern, I mean, a lot of what you talked about prior to the question, you touched on some of that, but as you think about, the term for me, I won't give any names, but Laura knows this story. I was at dinner one night with a fairly large CMO, and I'll say they had a lot of drinks. I'm not even going to tell you their gender. And this person said to me, hey, do you think I'm a modern CMO?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, yes, yes.
Of course you can say it.
But it was like a really fascinating question,
right?
That I would,
are you up to date?
As their agency, I would get asked that question.
Yeah.
And it sort of started framing, and this was probably it was probably 5 years ago, 5 years ago now. And it's shifted. So I want to hear your take on it too.
It's hard to predict what's going to be the next, right? And what's going to be cutting edge in the future. I know the value chains are constantly shifting. The channels are constantly shifting. There are new channels rising every day. So I like to put a premium on the who, what, and the how. And just, if I was to give advice to the next generation, really looking to kind of become modern in the future, I would say ensure that you build the skills in the who, what, how, meaning you have real understanding of who you're targeting, how to segment, how to identify audiences, how to really go after audiences, the strategy behind marketing, the what, the creativity. Creativity will not die. We will always need that soul, the creativity, the understanding of how to break through, and kind of like the mashups of, different ways to reach your consumer.
Audience,
On the how, there's a lot of digital, there's a lot of analytics, there's a lot of channel management, marketing mix, and a lot of technology can help you get smarter here. So understand the analytics, understand how to leverage your digital channels. So versus kind of like being a TikTok expert or being like a master segmenter or, like, forget all that. Just remember the basics of the who, what, how, and remember how to really get those things done, no matter what channel or medium or thing may arise, in the future.
Got it. And I'm glad you brought up creativity, because I'm leading us down that path.
Yeah.
All right, my agency friends, you just heard two really powerful CMOs describe what it means to be a modern CMO and modern marketing. So how are you preparing your organizations, to serve, what we're hearing from our friends on the brand side?
Yeah,
start with you.
I like what you said about how you're thinking about the word modern CMO, because it's really like the adaptive CMO, is more relevant than the modern CMO. And I think the way agency partners can help with brands and prepare is you have to really know what the brand stands for, the values of the brand, why the brand exists, and be very consistent with that, but tell those stories in new and modern places, but don't tell different stories, tell the same story in fresh ways or culturally relevant ways, but don't get caught up in leading CMOs down the path or marketers down the path of like, you have to be in this place and you have to tell the story in this way. Because it still has to be consistent, has to be simple, has to be consistent, has to be authentic, has to live the values. That's how you build a great brand. That's how you go from a good to a great brand, and not just following the next thing and feel like you have to be there and show up. In a new way.
Well, I like you. But you both said something that our friend David Sable said to me. And I started my agency career in New York City a long time ago, and it feels to me here we are in 2023, and not much has changed actually. Like the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like we're still doing email marketing. We're still trying to do persona segmentation. We're still a lot of the metrics haven't really changed. Like.
You're just trying to reach your audience.
You're just trying to reach your audience. And then you have this, the up and coming group in digital marketing and talking about how it's. I'm like, guys, we're talking about that 25 years ago.
The fundamentals are the same.
But now we see it from a different perspective because we've lived through it. Now we're like, I remember when I was in brand, they're like, you're a brand marketer? Oh, we need a performance marketer. And then I was a performance marketer. And you know what? We need a consumer-centric marketer. And now it's a modern marketer. Like they do it to us too.
Well, I would take it up a notch. You said adaptive, and I would agree with that. I heard a lot on context and agility and resilience and these things that don't change. I believe it needs to be a responsible CMO. I think that there is, to be a modern CMO is to take responsibility that's greater than the message or the audience that you're trying to reach, that it's actually looking at every aspect of your supply chain, all the decisions that you're making on behalf of the company, to make sure that every single interaction that someone has, be it an employee of the company or somebody that you're trying to reach, is an opportunity for you to grow the brand and the business. And I think if you reframe modernity as responsibility and you instill an ownership culture in everything that you're doing, you can avoid the work avoidance, I think, that happens, and really just get back to the fundamentals of what it is, the intentionality that's behind the work. And I think it goes to what you were saying about values, and it allows you to move faster and adapt because, you've got that compass. You're the compass for the company. everyone's looking to you for what's the voice, what's the message, what's the medium, how do we get out there, and how do we reach people? But if your belief doesn't match the behavior of the company and you're driving all this activity, even if you're using performance tools and everything that you can get your hands on, what's it all in service of? It goes all the way back up to the top.
It's really inspiring to me, because as we start to look at our brand and our messages, we are training that next generation of employees in our firm on, these really are kind of the boundaries of what we do. And also, these are the open gates of what you can do on behalf of the firm. Like particularly for the new up and coming generations within our firm, there's a big employee engagement element of the branding work. And they're really getting a lot of definition around their career and their workplace from the branding work that we're doing. So that responsibility is heavy in that you think about like how you're framing up somebody's mindset when they come in and swipe into the company, and whether that mindset is one of an ethically responsible citizen or whether it's, hey, I'm going to get every single penny I can, from this transaction. So, I find that inspiring.
I love how you twice went back to the employee engagement piece. And I think there is something there, as an agency partner, we probably don't think about enough.
Yeah.
But that the first job of a modern CMO is you need to be clear inside the company of what the brand stands for, what your values are. You have to repeat them over and over. You have to, because they get lost and people forget. But if all those employees aren't clear, there's no way that's going to translate to your audience in a clear way. You have to get that part clear first and repeat it, and you're really marketing to the talent at the organization before you're even marketing outside the organization. I think we forget that a lot. Like we're always like, going in with a big idea, but we're never put in that piece of how do you communicate that internally, which is as important.
There's another thing we forget, which I very much realized when I went to the client side, is that you're not thinking about your agencies all that much, right? Like agencies.
Is that true?
We're
not for you.
Oh, not for
you.
Okay, good. All right.
when you're
We think
most of
about
my
you a
career on
lot.
the
I just
agency
went.
side.
Only when the invoices come.
We don't stop thinking about, exactly.
I think of you every 30 days.
Yeah, 30 days.
Is that production line item?
Well, all we do is think about you, but you realize that 10% of your day, 5%, you have so many other things that you have to deal with in your organizations, right? And of course, internal branding is one of them, but selling the ideas in, fighting for resources, trying to get budget, explaining marketing to non-marketing folks, right? There's
a lot of that.
It was an interesting.
The education.
It was an interesting
Education.
2 years for me.
Yeah.
Because I spent most of my career
Surrounded
on the services side.
Right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm in-house and I'm fighting for dollars and I'm trying to, explain what we're doing and why we're doing it and how it's going to create short and long-term value. I just found that it was a crash course for me in empathy, for marketers.
Because we're business people. I think sometimes because you're a CMO, it goes right to the creative or the idea. But holistically, to your point, supply chain, we're about brand promises.
Yeah.
So our promises extend beyond the message. And so as a CMO, you're managing that promise across multiple different areas.
And that's why your needs are constantly shifting around being able to deliver on those promises.
Right.
And I think the CMO today, oftentimes in companies like that, we work with, the C-suite doesn't respect the role enough. I think the role in some places doesn't get the importance that it really deserves. Sometimes they're like, oh yeah, that's the marketing. We're making product. We're making the stuff. That's the marketing people over there. They do the fun stuff, but the real thing is making the product. But that, to me, like for a CEO at a company, the CMO should be, it's like that person and the CFO, those are the two most important roles, because that's what you're saying to the world for whatever you're putting out there. And I think oftentimes it doesn't have the weight or the importance in the organization that it needs to.
You want to?
No, I mean, I think that, I love being part of an organization where I think there's a real healthy respect for marketing, but where I do agree is that, the average life of the average tenure of a CMO is about a little over 2 years. And I think the biggest disconnect is between, that relationship of understanding all the different things that a CMO is now expected to do. And I think it's gone through, I don't know if you feel this way, but it's gone through, are we chief brand officers? Are we chief experience officers? Are we chief marketing officers? And I think to your point, because all of these things come back to what we're promising and having to deliver, our roles are becoming so much more complex. But it's that CEO, CMO understanding that I think, creates a little bit more opportunity and runway to really fulfill potential of that role.
And I don't think there's enough of the CMOs becoming CEOs. It's always like the CFO. I don't know. I'm just like,
It depends on
depends the industry. Yeah,
but I often see the CFO or the COO goes into that spot versus I feel like CMOs are more adept at potentially that role. So anyway,
The empathy.
that's my soapbox.
Brenda, do you have a comment on that? What Lisa expanded on?
So in terms of the education of the CMO
And just internally
role, or-
and merchandising what you're doing internally with the organization.
Bringing
I
them
think
along. How do you educate?
It varies a lot by industry. So in B2B industries, predominantly in financial services, there is a ton of education, and I can't show up as just the marketer.
Right.
I have to show up as a business leader who understands deeply the industry, the product lines, the financial picture of the firm. And I seldom talk about impressions or, programmatic or channels. I talk about how we're going to drive more efficiency in our go-to-market. I talk about the business challenges that our leaders are having and that we're trying to tackle as a leadership team. So I always speak to their listening. I don't enter with, the marketing speak, so to speak, but that will be very dependent on the industry that you're in. And if the industry you're in, I think B2C has an easier time at it. And you do see CMOs become CEOs because there's incredible overlap between the CMO role and the revenue, the top line or the bottom line. And that at the end of the day is what it's all about, right? How do you drive top line or bottom line through your discipline, through your craft? Some days I do that through comms. Some days I do that through internal branding. Some days I do that through external marketing, product marketing. Sometimes I do that through digital. So it's, I'm constantly juggling and orchestrating. And I seldom show, all of those tools behind me. It's just for me.
Don't look over here.
Don't look over there. You got a problem?
Who am I meeting
I'm
with?
going to do it. Yes,
exactly.
yes.
Pull this out?
Yes,
I am curious from both of you, though, is the, sorry, I'm taking over your question.
No, this is what I wanted.
It's been widely reported, on Airbnb kind of pulling back some of the performance marketing and dialing up brand and really leaning into the power of creativity and storytelling as a measure and not really feeling a fallout in terms of bookings, et cetera. I'm just curious. I know you have very different businesses, but on that spectrum, we've been talking a lot about performance. Are you following a similar path, or?
We are following. I mean, I think we've, for all the right reasons, I think a lot of businesses reacted to what we've been going through, right? And looking immediately to the next quarter for a reason. For a lot of businesses, they were in some level of crisis recently. And so I think as we're coming out of that and people are reemerging and kind of aware again of what's going on, going back to the branding and going back to storytelling and going back to defining what you stand for is becoming more and more important again. I think it's part of what we're experiencing now is what's that balance, kind of looking at that pre-COVID moment where we were, enhancing our storytelling is really coming back, in my opinion, and from my personal experience of what we're even doing in our company. So
Good news.
yes,
That is. That's
we're going through it together.
that's amazing.
We're optimists anyway,
that's
but that's
the best
just
thing
so
I've heard this month. Do you think? I'm taking over your
Please
question.
go.
I'm sorry.
Make my job easy.
But it made
just
me
sit
think
here.
when you mentioned the tenure of a CMO, which is like under 3 years or whatever. Is that part of like the importance on performance from the CMO's lens? Like I'm here. I got to keep this job, like maybe not keep this job, but I've got to prove myself very quickly. You know, brand building takes time. Like it's not a quarter to quarter measurement. Right. Creating, you know, brand equity takes time. Is that part pressure, of the, that pressure, does that impact the balance between like performance versus brand and decisions you make? Or?
I don't think it influences the decisions I'm making, but it does change the way I operate in terms of how I sequence initiatives. So given all of the pressures on a CMO, absolutely first year has to be about what are those tangible things that you can deliver for the organization that will match their move towards top line or bottom line. And sometimes that is a visual refresh, proxy for, you know, light brand work. And sometimes it's something more, like a revamp of your programmatic. Everything takes time, I would say. Yeah. And anything really good takes time. But depending on where you're going, the state of where the organization's at, you can identify some quick wins. So I'm not sure it's entirely correlated.
Yeah, okay.
I do think it's very cyclical, whether it's brand or programmatic. I feel like a lot of companies in the past 3 years or so, they push to the edge of, okay, this is as much as I can get from programmatic. I'm not getting that extra mile. And they've neglected brand and storytelling for so long that, okay, got to catch up, right? So you see a lot of companies now catching up.
So they swing to the other side.
Yes. And with COVID and some of the crises that we were dealing with, a lot of the funds went to tangible things, right? So programmatic, digital buys were top, and brand suffered. Now we're getting back to this new normal. You know, what is the normal that we're redefining? Part of that toolkit of that new normal, part of the marketing mix has to be a robust brand foundation. And every brand needs to be nurtured year on year. So I think we're playing catch up in a lot of cases on the brand and the storytelling for companies, because there's been a bit of a hiatus to attend to different crises.
And partly because it's been neglected, and partly because it hit a wall.
Correct.
And so it's kind of those two things.
Prove it. Yeah, I was having daily meetings with my finance folks to prove out ROI. It was madness for a while.
Did you have to educate kind of the attribution windows and how they had to look at different KPIs and what those were and measurement frameworks?
Absolutely. Yeah. Double ROI. We went down that path. We went down the path.
Double ROI.
Yeah.
Okay. Single ROI is hard enough. Yeah, double ROI.
That's the worst news that we hear. Double ROI. Oh, man.
Yeah, supersize that one.
Yeah.
It didn't work necessarily. I had to dial it back and put it into plain speak. You are getting more revenue because of X, and I had to attribute it back, but a lot of that, they didn't care. People don't,
Or it's not directly, right? You're building price elasticity, you're building margin.
Yeah.
Right, you're doing a lot of different things that's increasing the value of that product. That's improving profitability by just enhancing the value of what you're selling. That takes time too.
It does.
Right.
I mean, it's a good segue. And last question, because I tell you, time flies when you're
already
having fun.
Yeah. Okay.
And Lisa, you already went there, so you already answered the question.
Okay then.
What predictions do you have for 2023 and even 2024 as it relates to marketing and we didn't get deep into creativity, but Laura, how would you think about, what would you predict, is going to be our year ahead?
So I asked this of a teammate before coming over.
I did the same thing.
Did you throw a book in the process? Or was it part of
I said, well, this is a good question to toss out. Advertising's a team sport. Let's see what they weighed in. It was actually really refreshing and inspiring, and thank you to all of my colleagues who shared their thoughts. But I think the shortest, pithiest statement was something like, it's going to be good with some storms. Some may be fatal.
Oh, so buckle up. Here we go. I like that.
My team, someone on my team said there's two things. We're never going to replace imagination with technology. It's not possible, right?
I like that.
But what we can do is, for some of us, go from being pure creators to curators. And I was like, that is
That's
really
cool.
interesting.
That's
Because
nice.
it's true, for some people, we're going to just be able to curate some of the ideas as opposed to completely create them. But for some, that will never go away.
That's nice. I like that. Thank you.
I didn't ask anyone on my team, and I don't think I read the question. But so
You knew it was coming, though.
Yeah.
I did, of course. I did. I think we're seeing, and you guys kind of confirmed it, which is great. But I think we're seeing like that. Big ideas, creative ideas are still an endangered species, and you still need like that thing that connects with, humanity. And I think that is, and we'll see it as the economy starts to pick up in the second half of the year, that's going to be ever more and more important, even as we go more towards performance, and everyone's talking about AI and chat GPT, et cetera, et cetera. I think that is going to become even more and more important. So that's kind of my prediction, I guess, for the year ahead. Yeah, but I also think we're going to also see marketers that are spending now are going to be way farther ahead in 2024. Just getting more share of voice at less costs, because of the initial thing when you went on shaky grounds is to pull back on spending. And I think that we're going to see a lot of brands not doing that, and they're going to be farther ahead.
I think the heat around the creativity in the Super Bowl shows that we didn't get there, but shows that consumers are hungry for creativity.
You mean because it wasn't good?
I mean, I'm not gonna give you my opinion other than
I was depressed.
Other than okay,
Actually,
well,
I was depressed.
I mean, the Dunkin'
It became
Donuts.
formulaic.
I'm from Boston.
It was-
so the
Yeah,
Dunkin',
and celebrities.
Because there was a clear connection to the celebrity and the brand, and
It
I
was
think
just-
that's why
it worked.
it worked. And the stakes are high. I mean, it's
The stakes, and there's a lot of people that
There's
are
a lot of
commenting on the
pressure,
I know, I like
creativity.
this
fear.
as
I
well.
love that ad.
Yeah.
Which one?
The Coinbase ad from last year.
Oh yeah,
That
it
was
was
just
simple,
simple and
effective.
brilliant.
I'm an empath
Worked.
though, so farmer's dog, that got me. That was like the story that was not meant to be told, and
Yeah.
it got through, and it was just, it was amazing.
But also building on what you said, Jason, is the DTC brands that were so successful for so long are now opening brick and mortar. They're realizing that growth marketing, growth hacking isn't the only way to build a business,
And media
right?
arbitrage isn't
right,
it?
and
Yeah.
you know this,
Yeah.
better than anybody. So I think that's sort of my prediction for the year, is that you have that creativity trying to find its way back through, but still not losing that performance aspect in some way.
Yeah.
And to me, the bellwether are the DTC brands that are moving back into sort of traditional channels. How about you, Brenda?
Well, I think I mentioned, I think it's becoming a more and more volatile world, and that's the new normal for us. And when you see incredible volatility in the world, you'll see two kind of dichotomies.
Yeah.
Very predictable, formulaic, things informed by data or history, almost like AI powered, right, type of work and stuff. And then you'll see this other batch of stuff that is the search for truth, authenticity, breakthrough, and that's where I think that pocket of, good will unleash things that we've never seen before in terms of creativity, soulfulness, and that next level of brilliance.
Like
in
kind of a
marketing.
rebirth. Of,
Exactly.
I
That's
love
what
that.
we
Yeah.
needed. Yeah.
Well, what a great note to end on. Thank you so much. It's warmed my heart to sit on this couch with the four of you. And I really appreciate you taking the time today to do that with me. So, State of the Biz, Paul Marobella, thank you.